Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Episode 4 of HBO's Succession, entitled Honeymoon States. The title is based on when Willa uses this term to basically remark that in lieu of going on a honeymoon, her and Connor are going to be visiting 4 of the major swing states as this presidential election is approaching. These states were Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. Personally, if I were Connor, I'd probably swap out Minnesota for Texas. Texas is a swing state. It's now a purple state. I think the Republicans are in danger of losing in real life. I believe Connor is a Republican here, and they're trying to, in real life, the Republicans are concerned that Texas could go blue. So it seems like it would make sense that Connor would visit Texas rather than say Minnesota, but maybe that's why he's at 1%. Not the best strategy in the world. But while this episode inevitably was going to be a bit of a come down from last week's shocker, there's still a whole lot to love here. I often, and by often, we're talking about pretty much every Succession video I do, I have to talk about the work this show does in between the lines, off the page. And I really like what they did this week by making the "how long should I mourn before I start strategizing" line really fucking blurry in this episode. Everybody is scheming. Everybody. From the kids right on down to Carl. And most importantly, they're trying to position themselves favorably while feigning sadness, which is particularly interesting because they're all doing it and they all know that they're doing it. I think the best example of this in this episode, and it's not the most standout example, but it's the most interesting one to me, is with Marcia. Within the world of Succession, but also for us as viewers, Marcia was for all intents and purposes gone. But now that there's money and power and status to be had, here she is, very clearly, I think, exaggerating the nature of her relationship with Logan in order to get herself in a better position to get a piece of the pie. So let's talk about when I say Marcia was clearly exaggerating the nature of her relationship with Logan. So Kendall sees Marcia, who for the first of multiple times explains to him that her and Logan spoke daily. And I like that she even almost kind of muddles her own story here too. Like she says to Kendall, they spoke every morning and afternoon. So she came as soon as she heard about what happened to him. But then when Kendall replies and struggles with saying that he thought they were done, he's like, I thought that you were, I can't remember how he tried to word it, but he tried to say like, I thought y'all were done, but he doesn't quite get it out. She said that they spoke intimately every evening. So y'all spoke 2 times or 3 times? Because that sounded like 3 when you say, now you say you spoke every evening, but you said that you spoke every morning and afternoon. So you spoke every morning, afternoon, and evening. I don't think y'all spoke that much when y'all were together. And then why would I believe either of those numbers, but at least pick one? So That's why I say I think Marsha is the best example of this, because we expect this kind of shit from the kids, but when you see the people around them doing it, and I think one could argue that that the kids have corrupted these people, it hits a little bit harder when you see them doing it. Also of note, I think Greg and Marsha were unusually chummy in this episode, and that made me suspicious. Like, I don't know, I just wanted to throw that out there, but like he says, like, I'll catch up with you later, Marsha. And that felt not just too familiar, but it kind of felt like they already had business together. And Greg is like, yeah, we'll talk about that thing later. Maybe I'm reading too much of it into it. My wife didn't see anything wrong with that, but for some reason that kind of stuck out to me. Let's see. There are also a couple moments where the kids get real lighthearted, talking about like Logan's obituary and how Roman has already done grieving. And this didn't feel authentic either. And I think intentionally so. You know, it felt like the show was trying to tell us that they're not just masking their hurt, but they're also their confusion about their hurt with like insults and jokes. Like, oh yeah, like we're confused about how we feel and why we feel that way. So we're gonna like talk shit about them and joke and laugh. I think like, you know, when normal people are mourning someone, when they joke and laugh, they're just remembering the good times with that person. This was just them shitting on their father, and that was their way, I think, of trying to cope with their confusion regarding how sad they feel about such a bad person having passed, a bad person who really didn't do anything for them that they valued. I think this episode also sets up the structure for the remaining episodes. Now, of course, I could be wrong, but the show seems to be pitting like the kids versus the corporate folks, Frank, Carl, Jerry, Hugo, Tom. But it also seems to be creating these seeds of conflict between the kids as well, with how the episode ends. So I want to slightly change up how I approach talking about the episode, although I've already been talking about it for a little bit. I'm still going to come at it from a character approach, but I also want to group it by team for this episode, at least for this one at minimum. So team being like the Roy family, the kids, and then the Waystar Royco like corporate team. You know, again, Frank, Carl, Jerry, them. So I want to start on the corporate side of things with the debate surrounding the naming of an interim CEO. And now, mind you, the plan here is to sell Waystar Royco to Mattson. So that's why the CEO is interim. It's just like, you're just here to complete the deal, and then we're done here. So when Tom and Greg arrive at Logan's wake, assuming that's what it was, like it was at his house, there was a bunch of people wearing black, they link with the corporate folks, and we learn that they have an hour to pick a CEO before the next board meeting. And Greg trying to console Roman and Kendall in this scene, I thought was hilarious. When he's like, my guys, my lovely guys. Like, everything Greg does is hilarious. Side note, of note on time frames here. I read or heard somewhere that this season is set up where each episode is like one day. In the premiere, Connor said the election was in 10 days. So I think that means that we can expect the finale of the season and the show to end with some sort of presidential election, which is interesting to me because I kind of figured that would come earlier and we'd see some fallout from whoever ends up becoming president. So it'd be interesting that the show might end with that, and I think that's going to be of note. Anywho, the corporate side discusses strategy, and there's a great scene where Carl and Jerry go back and forth about how each of them would be better suited for the role. And then Tom says he wants to put his hat in the ring, and Carl absolutely destroys him. Now, I wrote down the exact quote because it's worth reading verbatim. So Carl says, well, before I even get to the quote, Carl is about to attempt to explain what other people might say as the con of Tom being the CEO. Mind you, he frames this as, this is what other people might say. And so he says the negative case would go, you're a clumsy interloper and no one trusts you. The only guy pulling for you is dead, and now you're just married to the ex-boss's daughter, and she doesn't even like you, and you are fair and squarely fucked. Like, and Tom's like, damn! He didn't say that, but like, he says something that's kind of like, damn, you didn't really have to go so hard on me like that. But it's all true. A clumsy interloper, I think that's a good way of describing him. He kind of like clumsily inserts himself into places he doesn't belong. No one trusts him. Why would you? His kind of like bumbling way of speaking you can't really read into it, and sometimes it's very bumbly and kind of cute, and it's like, oh, it's kind of aloof, and then sometimes it feels like it's being done to mask evil intention. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty fair assessment of Tom. If married to the ex-boss's daughter, she doesn't like him. It seems pretty accurate. Interestingly enough, Tom later talks to Roman about how they both know Logan really wanted him in charge, which is true. So I think really the only reason I point that out is I think it's very clear that Tom is not about to stand idly by while other people work toward the title of the show, Succession. While other people make their way there, Tom is not ready to stand idly by and let it happen. Tom is out here hustling. Let's see, where am I? Later, yep, Frank and Carl. This is important, guys. Frank and Carl discuss a paper that was discovered. Frank, as the executor of Logan's estate, was given this paper, presumably among other things, Logan's last effects, will, stuff like that. And initially, we don't know what's on this paper, but both Frank and Carl discuss the idea of just not saying anything and just getting rid of the paper. So you know there's some heavy-duty shit on the paper. Eventually, they meet with the kids, and we learn that the paper that they found mentions Kendall, and Kendall is going to mention this paper many times himself. Kendall's name is underlined as the potential CEO in the event of Logan's death. Shiv sees this paper and questions whether or not it was underlined or crossed out. And then when we see it, it kind of like starts off as underlined, but moves into crossed out. So you could say like, maybe it started off as an underlining and ended up as a cross out. Maybe it started off as a cross out. It started off being meant to be a cross out and visually looked like an underline. So you never really know what the intention was here. And that's going to bring me to my probably first and only like massive Succession theory. Is it plausible that Kendall would have access to, let's say, Logan's safe, and he would have underlined his own name on that paperwork? Like, I feel like it is plausible, and I feel like Kendall would do that even while his dad's body is still warm. Like, they make it a point to stress that it's in pencil and it's not dated. That doesn't strike me as something Logan would do. They also stress that it's not legal, but it doesn't need to be for Kendall to make the point that his father chose him or wanted him. And then they show Kendall looking at it at the end of the episode. And I think what we're supposed to take away is that he's kind of being reflective. Like, I can't believe my dad chose me to be CEO. And he's just looking at it like looking at the underlining versus cross out, kind of like, oh, this is crazy. But I'm wondering if he's looking at it in more of a, I can't believe I pulled this off despite fucking up the underlining, like this sort of way. Like, I don't know like how he's really looking at it. So I don't know. And doesn't it seem like something Kendall would do given the events of the end of the episode? Like, if he's willing to stab Roman and Shiv in the back and blackmail Hugo, who's to say he's above doing something like that? So really, I think motive were there. Ability, like as in like, is this something he would do? I think is there. It's just a matter of, does he have the access to do this? Speaking of that closing scene, though, I love how it called back to the conversation that Hugo had with his daughter at the very beginning. Like, I was paying attention, but it didn't seem like Kendall was when he walked in for the wake. So when at the end of the episode, when he's blackmailing Hugo and he says, "Unless you want me to pull out the strap on," I said, "Oh shit." Because that's what Hugo was saying to his daughter when he was talking to her when Kendall walked in. He said something like, "Oh, you fucked me with a strap on," or something to that effect. So that showed that Kendall heard the conversation. I'm also interested in the strategy for Roman and Kendall as CEO and COO, the strategy of their perception. Carolina says that their job, while Logan was in charge, was to burnish Logan's reputation. And now that Kendall and Roman are going to be in charge, it's her job to now burnish theirs. And they present a wholesome option of like, oh, look at this great family together. But then they present since people will question your competence, we could say you guys have been making a lot of important decisions, and Logan has been throwing his exes in the mental hospitals and fucking his assistants option. So you have the good one, and then you have that one. And I personally, I don't see how Logan being a piece of shit helps burnish the kid's reputation. The build yourself up by putting others down strategy seems largely ineffective, right? But I'm surprised that that's a strategy they found viable. However, I'm not surprised Kendall would take it, because I think Kendall is less concerned about a viable strategy and more concerned with proving himself and changing the perception of him. And not just the public perception, but the perception among his siblings and among, the corporate people at Waystar. He wants to be perceived as that guy. That's been Kendall from day one, episode 1. He wants to be perceived as that guy. And I think that is continuing to be the case here. And that's why he wants to push the downplaying of Logan perception. I mean, the downplaying of Logan and who he was as a person, because it's just who he is, man. He just wants revenge on his father for shitting on him, and he wants to prove himself. And I think that if he looks like someone who has, I guess, like, survived a shitty person like Logan, it kind of makes him look a little bit better. Like I said, I think it's more about Kendall's perception and not about whether or not putting Logan down is a viable strategy or not. He says Logan made him hate him and then he died, which, as if to say, like, I didn't get a chance to act on the hate that I have for him. Like he made me hate him and then he died before I could do something about it. So he likely sees this posthumous slander as an opportunity to do just that, like to kind of like act on that hate. And this also provides motive. Like if I'm right about him, underlining his own name, they'll provide motive for why he would do that as well. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence to support that theory. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around if he had the ability to do that, if he had the access. And maybe one of you guys listening to this would be like, yeah, they established in blah, 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 that he has access to Logan's safe for his paperwork, or a lawyer who might have that. I don't know, whatever. But I don't know. I think it's a viable theory, and I also think that it fits Kendall's who Kendall is. And then lastly, for this portion, off camera, which I thought this was a surprising choice to do it off camera, because this show has often been at its best when it's showing things like board meetings. But off camera, the board agrees to vote for Roman and Kendall as interim CEO and COO to complete the Gojo deal. And I just want to throw out there again, which I implied it earlier, if they fuck up the Gojo deal, because I didn't imply that they would intentionally fuck up the Gojo deal, but couldn't they just remain in the roles of CEO and COO if they just don't sell altogether? I don't know. Moving on, I want to talk about a couple of the kids individually, just a little bit on each one, and then I'm going to close out with some thoughts. So, talking about Kendall. As the episode opens, we see he's really broken up about Logan, and as he's walking into his father's house for, again, what I assume is the wake, we overhear Hugo on the phone and the whole conversation with the daughter, fucking him an ass strap-on, which I mentioned a minute ago. Now, later, Hugo approaches Kendall and essentially explains that he told his daughter, who is the Juliet that we hear him talking about on the phone, about Logan's death prior to the news being made public, as she sold a shit ton of stock, and we all know what that means. That's insider trading, baby. So, as I mentioned earlier, Kendall later used that information to blackmail Hugo into running with the slander Logan strategy, which is, so I just want to make sure we're clear on what Kendall was doing at the end, why he mentioned the strap-on thing and all this good stuff. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Roman, during the, I'm just going to keep calling it the wake, Roman sends Mattson the voicemail when he calls. Him and Shiv and Kendall are having a conversation, and he says, like, should I, send a voicemail or what? Kendall's like, give us 5 minutes to get our heads together, and he does that. Just like everything on the show is a power play or a move, when they do call Mattson back, he's not even on the phone, and very clearly, I think, has someone speaking on his behalf, and is still very clearly there. He's just feeding this person what to say. And the guy pretends like Mattson is unavailable, but is very clearly, I think, being told what to say by Mattson. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about this show. I wonder how true to life that sort of dynamic is. The dynamic of, like, do richer people do stupid shit, like lie when everyone knows it's a lie, and everyone plays stupid like they don't know it's a lie when they do? Like, is that a thing that happens among the rich and powerful? Like, if that happened to me, I'd be like, why are you fucking lying, you fucking idiot? But, like, it seems like all of these people just all are in on the lie. Excuse me. And they don't seem to care. Like, at that point, I just don't understand why you wouldn't be honest. They're like, if you're lying and everyone knows you're lying. We saw the same thing in the premiere when they were trying to buy Pierce, and they were told that she, I forget her name, it's right on the tip of my tongue. But the woman from Pierce, they were told like she had a headache, and it was like, we'll see how she feels in 5 minutes. It's like this complete total bullshit. But they all went along with it, and that's how I feel here. It's like, I know it's a power play by Matsson, but when everyone knows it's a power play and you're lying, don't you kind of lose the power? Like, because I think Roman even says like stop fucking around. And it's like, okay, if Roman and Kendall and Shiv know that you're there and you're pretending that you're not, you don't look powerful. You look stupid. Like, so I don't know. It could just be me kind of nitpicking, I guess. But I don't know. That's something they've done a lot, and I think it's just a weird thing to do. And I wonder if the show and the writers feel like this is a stupid thing that they do, but they also know that it's the reality, that that's just how people in this world operate. This kind of like, I have to behave this certain way openly, but we both know the reality and we're going to like pussyfoot around it. Like, I don't know. I can't believe I used the term pussyfoot. Anyway, Matsson says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said, Matsson says, whoever the guy is on the phone, he says that Matsson wants them to come out the next day to complete the deal. And side note on this is the only aspect of the show that I even really question. I'm sorry, of the episode. Why didn't the show entertain the idea of Matsson wanting out of the deal altogether? Like, they showed us that screenshot last week of, like, I'm assuming the stock price tanking. Like, Roman says something to, like, this is the effective dad or something like that. And you see, like, a steep drop in presumably the stock price. So the value of Waystar is plummeting. Why would Matsson still want to do the deal? Unless, of course, they meet with him next week, or tomorrow within the world of the show, next week for us, and he significantly decreases his offer. Then I retract that statement as a complaint. I don't know if I would call it a complaint. But well, before I get to my thoughts, I want to talk about Shiv for a little bit. A big piece of information we learned here that didn't land as much because there was a brief moment of confusion. We learned that Shiv is pregnant. And she's 20 weeks pregnant. And like the reason that didn't quite hit for me at first, because I already know the actress is pregnant. So there was a moment of kind of like, didn't I already know this? And I had to think like, wait, no. Tom's likely the father, but we definitely don't know that for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if, even if Tom is the father, if the show kind of plays coy with that for a few weeks. Like, we don't know. Like, is the father the fucking... what's this that piece of shit guy? The fucking journalist guy and news guy? I can't remember his name with his fucking hair. I don't like that guy. Guy looks like a young Jay Leno. I don't know, but I can see them kind of being coy with that. Even if they don't bring that guy as a possibility, I don't know. I can just see them kind of just playing around with it for a little bit. Later, there's a great scene between her and Tom on a staircase in which Tom tries to be kind and comforting to her, and he tells the story about another time he was there for her. And she says, like, that was a long time ago, and just leaves. And what I think is interesting about this scene is that it's more evidence that Shiv is struggling with her feelings for Tom. Like, she keeps wavering back and forth between this place of, like, I'm willing to let him console me for a little bit until I realize, I'm supposed to hate this motherfucker. And then she gets up and walks away. And there's also now a part of me that still kind of questions Tom's motives, too. Like, he seemed far more conniving as of late, and the ambiguous nature of everything he says historically just makes me kind of feel suspicious of him. Like, one thing I thought about between last week and this week that I think made the last episode special that I forgot to mention when I was talking about it is that having Tom deliver the news about Logan added to the fact that we didn't really know, like, we didn't know what to believe until way later. Like, say if Carl delivers that information, we're not going to sit there and be like, is Carl lying? But, like, with Tom delivering it in that kind of, like, bumbling kind of way where it's like, you don't really know if he's, like, willing to deliver heavy news. You know, it depends on who he's talking to. Tom has historically been kind of like, it's like the way he talks, you never know if he's serious or not. Like, even going back to season 1 when he would fuck with Greg, it would, like, seem really, like, mean, but then he was joking. And it's like, you can't really tell. Like, is he being serious or not? So, like, I think that was interesting in having another reason it was interesting that they had Tom deliver the news, because for the 3 seasons prior, he has consistently been a character where it's kind of like, I can't really tell if he's being serious or not. So moving that into this situation, I just still kind of like, I don't really know how I feel about his motives. So when I question whether or not he's being serious, me historically having questioned whether or not he's being serious, plays into how I interpret this scene with Shiv now too. Like generally, it looks like he's being authentic, but like I don't know, and I think that's interesting. If he's being authentic, congratulations, guys. You still got me doubting it because of how good of a job you've done with the Tom character up to this point. Shiv also gets pushed out of the who's going to be CEO conversation, unsurprisingly. I think Kendall hits her with all the typical reasons why, optics-wise, it wouldn't work for her. And I think part of the strength in his argument is that he makes a lot of good points. Roman makes a lot of good points to promote himself as COO. So I think, it's fun when, again, everything that's said is like valid. But you kind of know and feel that they generally just don't want Shiv to be in charge. I mean, there's been an anti-Shiv agenda from the beginning of the show. So even though they give good reasons, you could tell those aren't really the reasons. After the board agrees on Roman and Kendall, Shiv's very clearly pissed. She barks at Sandy, for constantly smiling, which that was a whole mess. Like the thing is like, why is he smiling? A whole mess. And then she falls down a couple of stairs while pregnant, which is unbeknownst to everyone but us, the audience, and Shiv and her doctor. So lots of interesting directions they could go with that as well. Not just is Tom the father, but also just like, okay, is this baby going to be okay? Like they said she's 20 weeks, which is 5 months. That's a lot to be falling down the stairs too. So lots to see. Lots to see how that plays out. Does not sound right. There's a lot to see regarding how that plays out. There we go. That works. So closing out with a couple thoughts. Kendall and Roman look at Logan's chair, and there's something draped across the back of it, and Roman's like, Jesus fucking Christ. And I couldn't tell what color it was, but do you know or suspect if that's the sweater that we see Logan wearing at the end of the opening theme / credits when when we see him from behind, it's just his back. It's like a navy blue sweater. I wonder if that was the navy blue sweater. I couldn't tell. It looked like it might be black. It looked like it might not have even been a sweater. I don't know, but I didn't go back. But I feel like that'd be cool if it was the same sweater. It was wild seeing Stephen Root's character pop back up in the wake scene, just because Barry premiered following Succession. So it was kind of like weird because it's like, oh, I know I'm going to see him again in a little bit. So that was cute. Is Carrie being genuine, or does she also have an angle? Like, she really wanted to get up to Logan's room at the wake, and she whispered something to Roman that they were talking about getting married. And I don't know, like, is that true? Is that a move by her? Or was it Logan making a move by telling her that? Or would he have done that? Or would he have actually married her and that would have been the move? Like, I don't know. I love how I think everything is a move, but Carrie has seemed very genuine in her dismay. But I don't know. The thing about, we were talking about getting married makes me feel like either Logan was fucking with her or she's fucking with Roman. Let's see. Shiv makes Roman and Kendall swear on Dead Dad's death day that they won't exclude her, and they agree, which means they're absolutely going to exclude her. So that's all I got for this episode. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I will see you guys next week for episode 5. And until then, peace.